Hello everyone. On the screen you will notice a Diablo 3 character planner. I don't play Diablo 3 anymore. However, a few of my Twitch streamer friends still do. One of them wants to do a Crusader for next season, so I decided to share one of my old theory crafts with them. That way if they want to try it, they can. While I was doing that, I decided to um, make a recording out of it all so I could share it with everyone else. Let's get started by talking about the skills. So this is a shield bash build. Um, Now when I first did this, that was back when we only had the Akkarat set. So obviously a lot has changed since then. The Roland set is now in the game, so that makes this build even more viable. Let's talk about that a little bit later though. So anyways, Shield Bash has the Pound rune in. Um, Punish has the Retaliate. Laws of Valor has Unstoppable Force. Shield Glare has Zealous Glare. Condemn has Eternal Retaliation. And Akkarat's Champion has Embodiment of Power. Those are the clickable skills. Um, for passives, you have Hold Your Ground, Wrathful, Fervor, and Holy Cause. Now, before we go off and talk about the items, let's talk about Fervor. Fervor is the only passive that can be changed in this build. Everything else is required uh, for this particular build in terms of your survivability and or damage. So Fervor gives you a considerable amount of DPS and a 15% cooldown reduction. Now you can change that out with some other skills, one of them being Insurmountable, which gives you Wrath generation per block, and the other one being Renewal. Renewal gives you um, flat life for each block. That's only if you're going to be doing more of a defensive build, which is entirely possible because you can switch Laws of Valor out for um, Laws of Justice, and then you can put the rune in that um, redirects 20% of the damage taken by your allies to you for the next 5 seconds. That's entirely possible. Um, Anyways, let me put this back, and now we'll talk about the items. So most of the items on this character are going to be crafted by the blacksmith. They are Bourne's Furious Wrath, Puro Morella, Guardian's Aversion, Guardian's Case, Bourne's Privilege, and the Helm of Rule. Now, Shield Bash gets increased damage from both weapon damage and shield block chance. So Puro Morello actually has two functions with that. Number one is the 31% chance to block, and number two being the reduction in cost. At the max roll, Puro Morello will reduce your Wrath cost of Shield Bash by 50%, which brings it down to a 15 Wrath cost. Helm of Rule furthers that with its 11% chance to block and its socket. The socket allows you to put a diamond in there for cooldown reduction. The reason that's important is because that lowers the timer on Laws of Valor down so you can use Unstoppable Force more often. Same goes with Shield Glare and Akkarat's Champion, which will help you get back Wrath. Now, with Unstoppable Force, that basically gives you a free Shield Bash for the next 5 seconds. So you can get in a lot of hits before that comes off. Um, as far as the Bourne Set, now the Bourne Set, unlike the Helm of Rule and Puro Morello, don't really affect Shield Bash as nearly as much. They more or less affect Holy Cause. Now, Holy Cause, I did mention it in the skill section. The deal with Holy Cause is increases the amount of damage you do by 10% on your weapon. In addition, it says whenever you deal holy damage, you heal for up to 1% of your total life. Now, as far as I can tell from the old days, this applied to any source of holy damage. That includes um, Condemn, that includes Bourne's Furious Wrath, and even Retaliate. Retaliate is the rune in Punish that says when you block with Hardened Senses active, you deal 140% of your weapon damage as holy to the attacker. Now, it isn't a whole lot of damage, but considering you alternate between Shield Bash and Punish, it's still a nice amount to have. Um, so that does help. Now, the one downside to that is the 1% of your total life. That means damage will not affect it at all, only life. Luckily, Bourne's set with only 2 pieces gives you a 15% life bonus. So that's pretty awesome. In addition, Bourne's Furious Wrath is crafted. So that means it has room for vitality and increased attack speed plus a socket, which is awesome, unlike In-Geom, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, as for the other items, you will have Roland's Bearing, Grasp, Determination, and Stride. Now, the reason I didn't finish the set is because if you notice, the next 2 pieces are Shoulders and Head. We can't take out the Helm of Rule in this build. That's just way too valuable for what we're doing. And you'll see uh, why more so in a minute. Um, Now, you could get the Mantle in there, but that puts you at 5 pieces. So really, there's no point in doing that, just due to the amount of time it's going to take to farm um, the Mantle and all of that. You're better off just using Born's Privilege and just continuing to craft that. Um, by the time you probably find Roland's Mantle anyways, you'll probably have Born's at a max roll anyways. Um, so anyways, yeah, don't finish that. As for jewelry, I did put the Flavor of Time in there, seeing as that was popular back in the day. Um, However, there is another alternative for that, and I'll show you in just a sec. Um, the other one is the Star of Akkarat. This one, it has also a cooldown reduction, and it also prevents all fire damage taken, and you get healed for 10 to 15% of the amount prevented. So that's an alternative. But I figured Flavor of Time would be better because it's cooldown and movement speed. Um, so that way you can use the 12% movement speed while you wait for Roll and Stride to roll movement speed. Even if you have Roll and Stride, it does increase your movement speed further. I know that Rift runners prefer a lot of movement speed so they can get through it quickly. Um, so I figured the Star of Akkarat would slow them down. Um, as for rings, the core is Justice Lantern. Now this calculator is not correct with Justice Lantern, so I'll pull it up over here. Justice Lantern got a huge change since I last played. Um, it gives you an extra 16% chance to block at its max roll, reduces the duration of control impairing effects by 50% at max roll, and finally, the big new one, is gain damage reduction equal to 45 to 55% of your block chance. Now, this build does run on block chance because of Shield Bash, so that means you'll be able to make a lot more out of Justice Lantern. That ring is your core for this build. Um, unfortunately, it's going to be a pain to farm that. I could never get a Justice Lantern even with a decent roll. As for the other ring, um, you can go one of two ways with that. Stone of Jordan will more than likely give you a better damage output, um, in terms of the elites and also because of the skill damage roll. However, Bolkatho's Wedding Band is also another alternative if it takes a while to find Stone of Jordan. That one increases your critical hit damage by 23-25, which will increase the DPS on your sheet. And also, its secondary, it does drain life from enemies around you. I did have to Google that. It's 0.04% of life over that duration of time, and it didn't specify how long the tick was, but that's possible as well. Um, Other than that, you just gotta pray for sockets and just put rubies everywhere. Um, that way you could do more damage. Now, that would be just like the overall build, ideally, by the time you get up to blacksmithing and everything. There are a couple items you can change out if you wish to, um, but let's go and talk about those changes. We'll talk about the bracers first. Now, Guardian's Aversion at two pieces gives you 250 vitality and 8,000 life per second. So that's pretty awesome. However, if you wish to change out the bracer for Drakon's Lesson, um, that's perfectly acceptable. This was something added more recently. Um, Gives you critical hit chance, and in secondary it says when your shield bash hits three or fewer enemies, its damage is increased by 300 to 400%, and 25% of its wrath cost is refunded. So that will allow you to do a lot more, I guess you can say, single target damage, but it does lower your healing because of that 250 vitality, and also because of the life regeneration. Now, let's talk about the other change. I did mention In-Geom. Um, In-Geom would go where Bourne's Furious Wrath is. Now, the calculator wasn't really correct on this as well, as far as I could tell. I think the properties is correct in terms of what it can roll, um, because In-Geom has a primary 6 to 10% damage, which basically takes out a slot for other stats. But anyways, let's talk about that. So, In-Geom will, of course, do a lot more damage than Bourne's Furious Wrath. Now, luckily, Bourne's Furious Wrath is made by the blacksmith, so you'll more than likely have a perfect roll by the time you even manage to find this. Um, but In-Geom will be more of your offensive option um, rather than Bourne's Furious Wrath, which is more of a defensive option. In-Geom does up to 2501 DPS. Bourne's Furious Wrath does 2274. Um, so my estimated calculation between the two, assuming you have similar properties, is about a 48,000 DPS difference. Um, so that's quite a bit. Um, Now the reason I said this is more of your offensive than defensive option is because once you roll sockets and attack speed on this, it does not have room for vitality as far as I could tell. Born's Fury Wrath does, so you'll get the vitality plus the 15% life from the set if you kept both of those items. So it can go either way. Um, Now, with the build talked about, I just want to quickly go off and talk about Corrupted Ashbringer. As far as I can tell, Corrupted Ashbringer is the highest damage weapon in the game. If I'm wrong about that, somebody can correct me in the comments. Now, as a Crusader, you can wield a two-handed weapon with a shield. That requires Heavenly Strength, which did get a nerf since I last played. Now it reduces your damage. So you would need Holy Cause to counterbalance that. and even then it's still minus 10% damage. It will still do more DPS than a one-handed build, um, but you do trade for a lot of things here. The first being is the holy damage. Corrupted Ashbringer's poison damage, so it's not going to be triggering Holy Cause. Bourne's Furious Wrath and In-Geom both do. So, just something to keep in mind. Anyways, that's the build. Hopefully I explained it well enough. If not, you can ask me questions in the comments or you can tweet me. Um, Thank you so much for listening.